Hello, this is Andy's Golf and Travel Diary, and I am here back in Sydney at the Australian Golf Club during the Australian Open. And it's another link. When I was down at Barnbougle, I saw this man's collection. This is Ross Baker, a professional and traditional club maker. And Ross, it's good to meet you.
Lovely to meet you, Andy. Lovely to meet you, mate.
I feel like I already know you through your collection.
Yeah, well, thanks for that. You know, your words were much appreciated. Yeah.
I said, boy, if there's another guy I need to meet in Australia, it's you. Do you have a couple minutes to answer a few more questions?
Yeah.
So Ross, tell me a little bit how you came to the game of golf.
I started as a trainee golf professional, Andy, in 1973. Left school at 16 and started as what we call then an assistant golf professional. And I've been club making ever since. Yeah, I soon found that my playing ability wasn't up to scratch, and so I was the kid in the back room and doing anything and everything with clubs. Yeah. Where
were you and who were you with when you had the first golf club in your hand?
I started off at a little 9-hole public course in Melbourne. John Crean was my boss, and I was there for about 1.75 years, and nowhere to practice or train or anything there. And then I went to Commonwealth Golf Club down on the Sandbelt in Melbourne. Yeah, really respected. Good course down there on the Sandbelt. Yeah.
So what about making these beautiful clubs caught your eye? Why are you a club maker?
Well, I started collecting, back then at Wattle Park, because we used the hickory shafts to extend metal shafts, and anyone who's been in club making will know the old hickory shafts were beautifully tapered, fitted down nicely inside the butt of a steel shaft. So we cut all the hickory shafts to extend clubs. And I said to my old boss, we shouldn't be doing this. This is no good. They'll be history. Rubbish, he said. They're gone. And I said, go and get a stick of Dowling down at the hardware store and we'll save these clubs. And he come back and said, well, here's the Dowling. You may as well have a few of these clubs. So I collected hickory clubs, but they were sort of from 1910, 1920s. Nothing real exciting. And as my collection grew, I realised that really the truly good ones were the long-nosed clubs from, the early 1800s through. And I never had the income. So gradually I thought, well, I don't see why I can't make one. And so I started making long-nosed simply because I couldn't afford to buy them. And it's just developed from there.
Ross, show me how you make a long-nosed hickory club.
Yeah, sure thing, Andy. Well, look, I'm using hawthorn timber, which is a hedge timber. The early club makers used fruit tree timbers, hawthorn, blackthorn, apple pear, and then by the 1860s got into persimmon out of the US, and that was, plentiful, and so that's what they went to using. But I'm using hawthorn, it's plentiful in Tasmania, and I basically look for something with a bend in it, because the bend gives me strength from the neck into the head. I cut it out by hand, like that, get the blank, and then take the blank down, get a club head. The early club makers always put a strip of ram's horn on the leading edge to protect it. So there's the ram's horn, cut a strip of that. 3 dowels to plug it in place. I try to do it all as traditionally as I can. The shaft starts off as a wooden blank. No lathes involved. We plane the 4 corners and get 8, plane the 8 corners and get 16. It's pretty round by then. And then we get the right taper. If you want a play club or a driver, well, it's going to be a more slender, whippier shaft. If you want a niblick or a putter, you want a stouter, thicker shaft. It's exactly the same as shafts and flexes today. Really, you're just using the timber from yesteryear, that's all. And take the shaft down till it's like this. Put what we call a splice joint in it. And that splice joint marries up with, your joint on your head. Stick it together with an animal glue. Put our binding on around it, which really gives it its strength. And then it's a case of pouring the lead in the back because your head's way too light. Old guys always used to say a good putter was well boned. That's the ram's horn and leaded. Plenty of weight in the back. and we pour that in malt and then fashion it from there. Rub it all back, pitch it, shellac, French polish, and wrap on a leather grip that I cut out of a full hide, and there's your sort of finished club.
And there you have a piece of beauty created by Ross. Tell me about the Australian Golf Heritage Society.
Well, they're a group of keen golf historians, golf collectors, started here in Sydney. They started off as golf collectors, and they become Golf Heritage Society of Australia, and an enthusiastic group of people, you know, looking after the history of golf and promoting the history of golf.
Well, Russ, it's been a pleasure to meet you, and I have to say I don't think I've met somebody more enthusiastic and more proud and more knowledgeable about the history of golf, and a true club maker in these modern times. It's been a pleasure to meet you, and thank you very much for being part of Andy's Golf and Travel Diary.
Absolute pleasure, Andy, absolute pleasure.